वही जो गेम है वो इस वक्त हो रहा है कि the US is raising rates and अचानक the rupee is starting to devalue very fast. The euro, the pound, all currencies have gotten a battering because जैसे you raise rates, the dollar started becoming stronger. जब आप उसको देखेंगे तो that's when risk on returns, where everybody is suddenly willing to take risk because the US dollar will no longer be the strongest. I think 2023 is going to be a recession in Pakistan. How we've governed, how we've been on a consumption-based economy rather than building our own manufacturing and import-based economy. You know, you're failing for no reason of things that are out beyond your control of execution or your capabilities as a founder. You're failing because of timing. I think we just saw the prelude. I think first half of 2023 is going to be much more painful, where a lot of companies start to run out of money. I'm trying to create a thing that I'm assessing that is this person capable of lasting through this, not just in the upward pump, but downward. So it's that tenacity component. Our potential is much stronger than even Bangladesh. On the manufacturing side, Bangladesh has done well. And I'm talking about two of the biggest professions in the world, right? You'll find Pakistanis everywhere at top hedge funds. It has to be patient capital. Can't expect that you're going to put $750,000 and you're going to get like 1.5 million in 2 years. We're in the exchange of value disruption today, which is money merging with the internet. That's the ecosystem this is playing out in, and we're eventually going to move to a new monetary system in the world. जिसके आपको fissures अभी नजर आ रहे हैं. In my world, I consider crypto to be actually safer than your regular currency. कोई भी real estate market है जिसमें लोग बैंक से borrow करके ले रहे हैं, those markets get riskier and riskier the further along you go. Because generally people don't have the actual money to continue to pay the installments.
Assalamu alaikum everyone, and welcome to another episode of How Does It Work, a podcast by Pakistani. Today we have a very special guest. He is the co-founder of Zayn Capital's Bitrate Fund and the godfather of venture capital in Pakistan. Faisal Aftab, thank you very much for being on the podcast.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so firstly though, I have a lot of questions in regards to venture capital and a lot of things that we want to know as an audience, but what's going on right now in Pakistan and what's going on in the world, and is the startup bubble over?
Yes and no. So I'll talk about the world and then I'll talk about Pakistan just to make it easier because all interlinked. So really this current wave that we're on started in 2008, post 2008, the GFC, the global financial crisis, where interest rates in general, which is interest rate determines the value of money in any country, and globally it has an impact. So where interest rates were cut to near zero in the US, in Europe, in pretty much most of the world.
And why were they cut to zero?
They were cut because basically whenever you have a crisis, a crisis or a recession means effectively the economy is going into deflation or shrinking, as we're experiencing right now in Pakistan. And the general sentiment is low. It's just a human sentiment, which is what the collective of the economic sentiment is. So in order to spruce up the economy, you bring rates down low to stimulate. ताकि borrowing cheap है, उससे then unemployment actually you have to pick up again, because typically before a recession, during a recession, unemployment goes up, which then impacts the overall sentiment. So when you look at what's happening in Pakistan, we have to go back to 2008, where the US Reserve Central Bank, their state bank equivalent, cut rates to near zero to stimulate the economy from a very deep downturn that they faced. And that then rates were kept almost near zero up till about almost 2017, while they started raising rates in 15, वो बहुत हल्के से raise कर रहे थे, but 17 में उन्होंने aggressively raise करना शुरू किया. तो अगर आपको याद है जब उन्होंने 17 में rates अपने raise किए होंगे, तो हम from a Pakistan perspective, अचानक 17 में रुपये जो था वो तेज़ी से depreciate करना शुरू हो गया.
Right.
तो वही जो game है वो इस वक्त हो रहा है कि the US is raising rates and अचानक the rupee is starting to devalue very fast. So that obviously impacts all businesses. So if you notice, real estate is slowed down. Stock market, technically the stock market should go up technically the stock market should come down when the currency is getting stronger, which is what's happening in the US, or at least it's moving sideways. In Pakistan's case, because the currency is devaluing, तो वो weaker हो रही है, तो इसीलिए stock market जो है it should be going up, but because we have a larger crisis right now, floods हो गए, थोड़ा सा political crisis भी हुआ हुआ है, so the combination of that is causing a contraction in the overall economy. So now, आपका जो question था regarding startup bubble, so look, that cycle started in '08. Money was effectively free. So whether it's venture capital funds, investors, everybody was making money. And I'm talking mostly about the developed markets because Pakistan ki one thing that's different about our ecosystem, your tech ka ecosystem hai, यहाँ पे I would say almost 99% of the money जो आया है, it's come from abroad. It came from the US primarily, from Europe, from Southeast Asia and Middle East. But invariably, US led the charge. So, or even though those coming from Europe, उनके भी जो investors हैं, उनके पैसे US stocks से impact होते हैं, या you know how what their risk appetite is. So all this is interlinked. So जैसे ही वहाँ पे market shift किए हैं, in terms of, and a lot of this has to do with geopolitics as well. Effectively, inflation came into the developed markets. हमें तो आदत है पाकिस्तान में it's high inflation होती है यहाँ पे. But US में for the first time they started experiencing inflation rates जो उनकी 2% पे होती थी, वो अचानक 6, 8, 9%, which is pretty, not the population there is not used to this. Plus, it should not see this because unke paas they have a reserve currency,
right,
which is supposed to be a stronger currency. So, Federal Reserve changed this policy. Central Bank to US का है. इन्होंने अक्टूबर में announcement कर दी कि हम going forward हम interest rates को बढ़ाएंगे because हमारी focus जो है it's primarily inflation now. Historically थोड़ा सा वो markets को support देते थे. इसको कहते हैं the Fed put, जो पिछले almost आप कह लेंगे 12 plus years से we were seeing everybody would just put money in the markets and they would just keep going up. So it's a significant paradigm shift. So to sum it up, जो 2008 से लेके 2008 से लेके 2020 तक जो market experience है लोगों का and how to approach the market, in my opinion, the next 24 months, you have to navigate the markets very differently, as well as businesses, because the environment change over here.
And what happens after 24 months?
So 24 months is very speculative, but in my opinion, जिस तरह अगर आप देखें तो US के central bank ने rates को raise किया है consistently this year. जैसे उन्होंने rates करना शुरू किया, frontier markets जो थी, like Pakistan and emerging markets and pretty much even developed markets. So if you look at the euro, the pound, all currencies have gotten a battering because just as you raised rates, the dollar started becoming stronger. Now, they raised rates so aggressively, not since the 70s. So it's been a long time since they've raised rates like this. So we went from, आप कह लें कि literally near zero interest rates in earlier this year, January, उस वक्त हर बंदा पैसे raise कर रहा था. उन्होंने मार्च में 50 बिप्स या 0.5% रेट्स को बढ़ाया, बल्कि इनफैक्ट मार्च में उन्होंने आई थिंक सिर्फ 0.25% बढ़ाया था. देन उसके बाद उन्होंने 50 बिप्स किया, देन दे वेंट 75 बिप्स, व्हिच इज़ बेसिकली अ प्रीटी अग्रेसिव मूव अप बिकॉज दे कुड सी कि इफ दे डोंट डू दिस उनकी अपनी इन्फ्लेशन डबल डिजिट में पहुंच जाती. लाइक वेरी इजीली इट कुड हैव गॉन टू 11-12% इन द US. सो दे आर ट्राइंग टू स्लो द इकोनॉमी डाउन एंड प्राइमरली अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट जो है वहाँ पे काफ़ी लो है US में. तो एवरीबडी इज़ वेरी कैश रिच एंड पीपल मेड अ लॉट ऑफ मनी फ्रॉम क्रिप्टो, स्टॉक मार्केट एंड इवन द स्टिमुलस चेक्स जो उन्होंने किए थे 2020 में, तो वो सारा जो था वो मार्केट के अंदर it was having an impact. Plus there were some supply side issues globally that was also exacerbating inflation. And so when you take a look at this entire equation, I think the Federal Reserve takes rates high and keeps them there for till at least Q3, the third quarter or the second quarter of 2023.
Okay.
Before the US economy starts to shake, and you will have high unemployment there. मेरे ख्याल से unemployment very quickly जाएगी, जो 6 से 9 महीने के lag पे आती है. It'll be probably somewhere around 6 to 8% in the US, and then the economy will look very weak. Inflation खुद ब खुद ही naturally नीचे आ जाएगी because demand कम हो जाएगी, and then you see the Fed will cut rates again to start to stimulate the economy because now there's a crisis. And जब आप उसको देखेंगे तो that's when risk on returns, where everybody is suddenly willing to take risk because the US dollar will no longer be the strongest. I mean, it'll be the strongest by far, but meaning that the strength that is shown in the last, आप कह लें कि this pretty much this entire year, that's going to change.
Right.
And that's where you see. So Pakistan, the majority of our troubles, I think 2023 is going to be a recession in Pakistan. And we've already been in a recession, but I think it's going to be
Worse.
a continued painful year in Pakistan. And some of it is linked to our structural economic issues, how we've governed, how we've been on a consumption-based economy rather than building our own manufacturing and import-based economy. तो वो चीज़ें तो हमें लॉन्ग टर्म ठीक करनी वो एक दिन में नहीं हो सकती हैं बट व्हेन यू लुक एट the other mistakes we've made, which is basically continuing to allow a lot of products to come from abroad and expand our balance of trade towards the negative side, not the positive side.
course, yeah.
So that is going to really catch up as well. But 50%, I would say, of the damage has also come from a strong dollar, which was not in our control. So every time I see online, I see on a daily basis, rupee goes up another 1 rupee, or rupee devalues another 2 rupee against the dollar. So अक्सर लोग they just start looking only at our economy.
Yeah, they look at the government इनके हुकूमत क्या कर रही है, ये लोग क्या कर रहे हैं, वो ऐसे हो रहे हैं.
वो जो उसमें obviously 50% फैक्टर इनका भी है, लेकिन इस साइकिल में जो फैक्टर है वो ज़्यादा डॉलर की स्ट्रेंथ पे भी है. तो जो वो एक दिन से अगले दिन अचानक यूज फ्लक्चुएट करता है, कभी कभार हमारी इंटरेस्ट पेमेंट्स ड्यू होती हैं, इस तरह की चीज़ें होती हैं, बट एट अदर टाइम्स is really because the dollar is getting strong. So my advice is to always look at it's called the US DXY index.
Okay.
That is the aggregate index जिससे आपको पता चलता है कि डॉलर स्ट्रांग हो रहा है कि वीक हो रहा है, because that's the measure of the dollar against 4 or 5 of the other strongest currencies, जो basically reserve currencies हैं. And अगर डॉलर स्ट्रांग हो रहा है, वो इंडेक्स होता है जैसे 100 से प्लस is usually a strong dollar, 100 से less is a weak dollar. Very very simple mathematics. So, in my opinion, that's going to be strong for at least 90 more days. So, usme rupee pe abhi agle till the end of the year, we're going to see a lot of pressure on the rupee. And then next year, oil bhi cheap ho jayega. It'll come down. Jab dunya recession mein jayegi, to oil should come down. And then subsequently, you'll start to see ke as they cut rates, dollar bhi weak hona shuru ho jayega. Then 2023 mein Pakistan's troubles go away. To some extent, not all of our troubles, but abhi to emergency hui hai na. It's so like this emergency feeling. And then the other thing is human sentiment. So jab bhi koi cheez bilkul bottom pe pahunch jaye sentiment wise, so then there's only one way to go up, which is called up, because it seems better than what you experienced, right? So even slight uptick.
And there's multiple types of startup founders right now. एक वो हैं जिनने sort of wave ride किया and raised that big round. उनके लिए तो it's, from what I understand, and a lot of them that have been on the podcast as well, say कि increase your runway, reduce your burn. There's a logic to follow. Like for example, before this we were having a conversation with a friend of mine who hasn't raised money yet, right? There's startups right now who are not in that phase, and एक वो startup है जो आई raise किया बंद भी होगी, एक वो startup है जो आई raise किया अभी पैसे हैं dry powder की तरफ से बैंक में पड़े हुए हैं. What about the startup that's in the market right now? Unfortunately, didn't ride that wave. And now, is there capital in the market? Should they just wait till 2024 and start again? What should they do?
Yeah, so in my opinion, so there's two elements. Like I'll talk about the startups that are raising.
Right.
So if you're trying to enter into the startup space and launch your startup, it's probably not a good idea to do it at this time. Not to be discouraging, but you have to time it with the market, right?
Right.
So the proverbial word in cricket would be, "Yaar, pitch pe pani pada hai, try not to do a chakke." And in startups, you have to try to basically keep trying to hit sixes.
Yeah.
Go a little bit slower. So it's better to raise as we get closer to liquidity. And interest जो है वो उससे पहले बहुत से लोग होंगे जो front run करेंगे market को. Let's say पाकिस्तान की VC market returns to I would say formidable, not 2021 because that was a bit of an anomaly, but at least to levels that are sustainable. And I'm not talking about dollar size. Check sizes may be bigger in coming to Pakistan, but the level of investors' diversity and scrutiny level is going to be much higher. But let's say it's coming back in June of 2024. Speculatively, I think it'll be sometime Q2 to Q3 where really things start to pick up again in that same level. Pakistan, world में 2023 के probably second half में VCs बहुत ज़्यादा active हो जाएंगी दोबारा. You don't want to launch now and then basically not be able to raise, let's say you only raise $200,000-$300,000, and then you don't have the runway to survive for at least 12 to 24 months. That's you're failing for no reason of things that are out beyond your control of execution or your capabilities as a founder. You're failing because of timing and market liquidity timing. So there's timing for the product. Okay, the right time you bring the product to the market, the right number of users are in place. I'm talking about smartphone users,
Of course,
right? In that particular vertical, for example, right? And the other one is basically the timing of liquidity. So if you try to raise in a bad market, it's like applying for a job. I mean, actually, the easiest analogy would be if you're a young graduate, if you apply for a job in a good market, you may get like 10, 15 offers. But if you apply for a job in a bad market, chances are you might be looking for 6 months, 12 months. Now, what ends up happening is that if you're looking for the longer you're looking, the tougher it becomes to re-enter the workforce. This is just a global phenomenon because your resume is floating around. So my advice would be to sharpen the knives in the idea, run the mental exercise of how you're going to execute this over the next, 12 months. Once you launch the venture, the first 12 months, 5 years, and build that mental picture in your head and ensure what is it that you've missed. Most founders don't get that opportunity. And then Jesse, timing correct hogi, try the first attempt, in my opinion, sometime in late 2023. And by the way, this is different. This is not true for all founders. I mean, I'm trying to paint it with a blanket.
Yeah, of course.
And if you've just left Google and you partner with someone from Pakistan who's like also
and you got some patented
Number two at
technology, that's
Kareem.
something.
I mean, you're going to raise. It doesn't matter. Good founders and solid founders are basically going to be able to raise in any market.
Yeah.
But that is a rarity because risk appetite is low right now.
Right.
So that would be my advice. So what I will say is that if you're an existing player in the market, I think that, and you raised last year, I think if you don't have the mindset that I'm going to survive till at least the end of 2023, if not, I would say June of 2024, which is what I've been telling all of our portfolio companies.
Right.
And, thank God most of them have a pretty formidable cash reserve. But it's going to be very tough to find incremental capital, and you may have to shut down. And you don't want to shut down and go into a downturn.
Yeah. So, in terms of employees now, right? So there's a lot of people that watch this podcast who generally pro-Pakistani padhte hain, that work, some at Daraz, some at smaller startups, newer startups, all kinds of in the tech space, right? And jab ye news hai, a lot of them got nervous. Should they go be looking for jobs at Nestle again? Because you hear of 70% layoff, 80% layoff, this company shut down, that company shut down. Is there going to now, is the worst over, the Band-Aid has come off, or is it going to get worse?
So I think the Band-Aid hasn't come off.
Okay.
I think we just saw the prelude. I think first half of 2023 is going to be much more painful, where a lot of companies start to run out of money. And no one's going to go unscathed. I mean, it is impossible for any fund to make a call and the entire portfolio is stable, right? We make good calls, bad calls. But I do think that as the world goes into a recession, next year, which Europe is already in a recession. We're in a recession. Most frontier markets and EMs are technically in a recession because of the dollar. But as the US investors realize that the US is actually, in my opinion, already in a recession, much milder than the rest of the world. And they'll probably go into a deeper recession next year. But again, relative to the rest of the world, it'll be milder just because they're the strongest economy and they have buoyancy of demand. Like when things aren't good here, everybody runs after the U.S. stock market and the U.S. dollar. So they get that buoyancy as a safe haven, like protection. So because of that, I think that overall, remember, investments is nothing more than how you're feeling as an investor and how your investors in your fund are feeling as well, right? So I think that sentiment is going to go deeper negative next year. Just in the first half. But I think the second half, things will start to look like blue skies. Finally, the clouds will start breaking. Thodi si sunlight aayegi. And hamari triple whammy hui hai. Currency crisis, political crisis, and basically the new startup industry experienced its first real big. I mean, we had our first wave with Daraz and Kareem. And I mean, even though Kareem is a regional player, but the workforce was in Pakistan. Food Panda, the original big three that I say. But I think this was the true first wave of Pakistan in terms of the tech cycle where we came on the map. And I do think that we will be back. The companies that survive, by the way,
Are
this
gonna
period
thrive.
is going to be the funnel for as investors come back, because they're going to be looking at those companies. And so that's you have to have that mind. It's a mindset shift that is necessary. You can't do the same thing you were doing in the previous cycle, at least for the next 24 months. And I do think, by the way, that previous insanity is going to return, where they cut money, free money is coming. That's a mathematical certainty. The central bank is going to cut rates. The U.S. central bank.
And you personally, as a venture capitalist, are you looking at pre-seed checks or seed checks right now?
We are. So we've invested even in the first half this year. We've invested in the second half this year, being extremely conservative, because it's any business that does not have a path to profitability. We generally try to avoid those models anyways. Where unit economics don't make sense, but in my opinion, any business which needs incremental capital, and there are models that have long-term legs, and they need incremental capital to get to a market share and then sustain. I think they're going to struggle to raise subsequent rounds. There are a couple of strong founders in Pakistan. There's a company, I think Fatma Gobi and Sharuk did Deal Card, for example, right? A very strong team. We looked at them. We wanted to also partake, but we had too much exposure in a similar space, not the same space. That team has raised enough to get through the initial period. And the investors that came in, they said, yes, we want to make sure that they get that 24-month period. So those type of deals can work. Snap Retail is another one that we did. We basically ensured that the money raised was enough to last that 24-month period. And so you're kind of ready when the capital starts to come back. So those are the type of founders that are high experience founders. One of the other issues that we're having in the quality of the deal flow is that in 2021, and this is very common, that's why I was so aggressive last year in my investments. What I felt was, and this is but in other ecosystems we've seen the same thing. When the first wave comes, the best people that have been working at, let's say, Careem, Food Panda, Daraz, that have scaled a tech company before, they leave because now the opportunity cost is there for them to leave their relatively high-paying salary job to go to a startup and raise money. So I still stand firm that I think the best teams were backed in 2021, and these founders, most of them will sustain and become the funnel for the future. But we will have a founder quality gap, because now it's called the rebuilding resource scarcity. So obviously Food Panda, everybody's had to hire new people. अब उनकी training होगी दोबारा, and they'll learn how to scale in a tech environment. Then all these companies that are coming up, their employees, as they get trained, they're going to come out and build good companies. Versus it's very difficult for us to back a college grad with no business experience suddenly creating a pre-seed company, unless, you have geniuses, obviously.
Yeah.
And,
Zuckerberg or whatever, yeah.
But, that's like 0.01%.
Yeah.
And I have backed a company where the founder is I think he would be, if he was in the US, he'd be making like $2 million a year as a programmer. That's very rare. I think most investors are comfortable backing founders that have demonstrated some level of execution ability in another tech company at a reasonable enough role, middle management to upper management. I think that's the quality we're waiting for again. So there's that scarcity as well component.
And what exactly is it about those particular employees? Just Samad from Truckerton, I think it's a venture you've backed as well, was on, and you saying that the Careem Mafia is what he called it. Kya special hai in the when they work in, for example, Careem or Food Panda? At a time when Careem was launched, I understand, because it was a very tech startup sort of environment. Has it not sort of saturated now? Isn't Food Panda or Careem more again, I've never worked there, so I'm guessing. But when a company gets to a certain level of scale, it's become a bit more bureaucratic, a little less startup centric, right? I'd imagine that's happened to some of these companies. So why is it still like if you're middle management or upper management in Careem, that's the way to be, or that's the way to go?
No, so that's the benchmark today, right? Let's look at the US, right? If it was in the 80s, you wanted to work at like Microsoft or Apple, right? Now people want to work at Google and Facebook and the new iterations that are coming up, right? So obviously that's going to change. I'm just using that as a benchmark today. out of this funnel, the stronger companies that come up, right? Like so, Abhi Finance, for example, is one fintech I like. Postex is another logistics one. Even BookMe, the teams there are just pretty amazing, right? The employees there, and I'm sorry, I'm not being biased. I'm just talking about my own portfolio,
Yeah.
but those are companies I know intimately, so I can speak about employees and founders there. So the layer two that's being trained and battling right now, those are the type of people we're going to back, right? Let's say they decide like in 2025, you know, like somebody in senior middle management role, I want to go start my own company. Because they've been through the trials and tribulation of building a business very closely with founders that I think are very good founders, I think those people have the experience necessary to take money and hit the ground running versus somebody that is trying to figure out cash flow themselves or even figure out what business is. Doing business is a very tough endeavor. You know, man, you're in multiple businesses, so it takes experience.
And that was going to be my next question, actually. What about the experience? And this is something I've noticed a lot, where those who've been in traditional or semi-traditional businesses, even like, let's say, with a tech component to them, and they may be very big in the tech industry, but they go out and try and raise capital for startups, right? For tech startups. And quite often they do not raise that money. Is that, I mean, I'm not naming names or being particular here, but my question that I'm trying to ask is, does traditional business experience help at all in the startup? Is that something you look at?
Absolutely.
So, if, for example, like someone worked in, I don't know.
So Snap Retail.
Yeah. Okay.
The L'Oreal, Unilever, a lot of the team, fairly senior management, they came together.
Yeah.
And they have the requisite skill sets.
Right.
Because they had entrepreneurial leanings already. I don't think if someone is in their 60s, it's going to be easy to adapt that startup because the adaptation is very. I mean, I'm technically too old to go build now. I mean, at this point, I can invest because I built tech businesses in my youth, so I understand the tenacity required to build it. So typically, that's what I'm looking for when I'm investing in founders. So some of these guys, like the founders that you mentioned, it was when we were talking. It's not just about being next to McKinsey and I can present well. That actually is a flaw if you invest in Pakistan like that. I mean, I'm not denigrating McKinsey guys. They're very smart, and I actually would. Ideally, you want a McKinsey guy, and you want a rough around the edges guy that knows the street, pure Pakistan, street cred, you can say, right? That combination is really good because basically you have to understand how things work locally, receivable cycles, right? Controls that are in the developed markets don't necessarily work in Pakistan. यहाँ पे collusion बहुत ज़्यादा होती है. In the developed world is assumed collusion. You can't even do an audit unless when you do a financial audit or operational audit, you assume that there's no collusion. Because if you assume collusion, no system or control is in place.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Right? In Pakistan, collusion is the name of the game, right? So you have to, and so I feel like it took me, I moved back in 2016 from the US. It took me 2 years to understand हमारे जो cycles हैं यहाँ पे क्या-क्या games होते हैं, how people figure out ways like to siphon money out of a business, whether it's a vendor, whether it's a lease. So as a founder, you have to kind of have that grasp on things also, right? You want to avoid leakages. And then you also want the vision, the external vision. So I think the best teams I like is where somebody's worked in an ecosystem abroad and is bringing that know-how, which in Pakistan you have a lag effect. So you can kind of see future में चीज़ें कहाँ जाएंगी, but then combining with somebody with local knowledge. So I'm just giving you a flavor of what, this is at least my interest, like in terms of when I'm looking at founders. I'm not thinking about, इसको pump करो, ले जाओ like $100 million पे and then basically do secondaries and, screw the next investor. That's not the objective here. You're trying to play the long game here, right? We want to play the game that it's a 10-year bet.
Right.
A lot of these exits are not going to happen even for 12 years. We might see like the first exit in 4 or 5 years. I'm just talking about individual portfolios, but a bulk of the exits will happen in 7 to 10 to 12 years. So it takes a while to build a track record, and rather than thinking how quickly can I get a higher valuation just for the sake of trying to raise my next fund, as an investor, I'm trying to create and this I think all other investors think like this in Pakistan as well, but I'm trying to create a thing that I'm assessing that is this person capable of lasting through this, not just in the upward pump, but downward. So it's that tenacity component. And uske liye personally, I like people that come from the middle income bracket in Pakistan or the lower middle income bracket
They're hungry
in Pakistan. They're hungry.
Yeah.
People of our demographics, I told you I can't even go build right now. I'm too lazy now. I've enjoyed the good life. So it's easier to invest.
And when you raise around, right? Like now, and I mean from the venture capital perspective, what do you tell your investors? And also, in terms of them coming on board, I'd imagine no one has seen a return on investment yet, or have they? And
They have
okay,
some.
So how?
There's been a few acquisitions here and there. Like Surrey has come into Jugnu with a pre-cap. They're going to end up basically buying that company. So that it's not realized yet, but it's partially realized. Food Panda acquired, was it Eatoy, one of the existing companies? Even if it was a smaller exit or a share swap, it was an exit. What am I forgetting? The Easy Pesa component with Telenor.
Right.
So yes, there haven't been mass scale exits in Pakistan yet, but that's an evolution of the process. You first have to build something formidable for the growth by acquisition of big tech to happen in Pakistan, which will happen. Let's say Facebook acquires some particular technology that they're looking at in the MENA region. And then the MENA company, as it has pressure to continue to grow and get market share, will acquire a similar business in Pakistan. And so that's an evolution process. But E-Ocean, they just ended up having a pretty decent exit, even though it was a homegrown inbuilt within Disrupt.com or the Gary Tech team. But it's pretty amazing, right? That you effectively have had a $350 million proper exit. And this is just a start. I think the talent pool is very strong in Pakistan. I liken us to India is the hottest market from a global investor's point of view over the next 5-6 years. It is going to grow very rapidly. The reason is the demographics of India, the culture in terms of the English-speaking ability of the population. Pakistan and India are very similar. These are sister companies. We're mini India. Our potential is much stronger than even Bangladesh. On the manufacturing side, Bangladesh has done well from structural reforms point of view. But I'm talking about the talent. If you look at Pakistanis, in big tech, there's quite a few Pakistanis in Silicon Valley that are in senior positions and middle management positions in engineering, in operations, in strategy. If you look at finance, and I'm talking about two of the biggest professions in the world, right? You'll find Pakistanis everywhere at top hedge funds, top private equity funds, across the board, right? So that filters back to some extent. Bangladesh does not have that alumni element. India, by the way, also has risen. There was the alumni in Silicon Valley that actually lifted Indian tech scene first as outsourcing, and the second layer was the platform place.
And we're seeing that right now with Pakistani as
That's
well.
exactly, and you're seeing a lot of. It's amazing like how much the expat Pakistani community is galvanized behind this momentum.
Yeah, I've met so many Pak Launch, and these people are doing such great jobs.
Exactly. That's what I was referring to, Pak Launch.
Yeah, exactly. They're doing fantastic work. In terms of the fund that you raised, of course, there's an anchor investor, I'm sure, similar to when a startup raises. Yeah. Are there individuals who put money into this as well?
Yeah.
What's like a minimum check size for your fund?
So from a limited partnership agreement, the limited check size is $250,000. Just because these funds are heavily regulated and they're outside Pakistan because they're dollar-denominated funds that we're investing in dollars. But generally, like the average ticket size that we received from individuals was around $750,000. I did that with a very concerted effort. I wanted to ensure that a lot of the LPs that come in add value to us. It's also from a regulation point of view. Each limited partner that you have in the fund is effectively, you have to do KYC, AML, CFT each year.
Okay, what does that mean?
Basically, we have to make sure that the proof of funds, like we're a financial institution, so just like a bank, there's a whole segment that's actually managing that stuff. It's outsourced, but they're basically looking at that hey, we're not taking money from like some illicit activities that are money laundering based, or the source of funds were effectively black money. It has to be clean, legit. That's just a global regulatory requirement for venture capital funds, private equity funds, and any financial institution. So yes, a lot of individuals come us. A lot of them are actually very successful, either have built big tech, done exits, they add value, or they're actually successful Pakistani expat businessmen, and a few local business families as well that also have businesses abroad. So they were able to invest in our fund.
Okay. And when they invest, you give them a sort of 8 to 10 year. I mean, let's say I give you $750,000. What would you tell me? When should I expect a return?
So liquidity is going to be, especially in the first cycle, should be the highest return, but also the longest patient. It has to be patient capital. Can't expect that you're going to put $750,000 and you're going to get 1.5 million in 2 years. It can happen if there's an exit, and my wish is that it happens sooner rather than later. But in all reality, you should be prepared for at least 7 years. I'll give you an example. I myself was a limited part investor in a venture capital fund, 500 startups. The fund one when Dave McClure and Christine Tsai were raising. So I ended up putting a check there as well. That was, I think, 2011 or 10. I think it was somewhere around that time. I started getting realization of that in the sense that the money started coming back for the first time. I think it was 5 years later.
Okay.
And then it started accelerating. 6-7 years later, it all started coming back. And so...
And did you make money on that?
Yeah, that fund is in mark to market right now. It's, I think, at least I'm not sure if I should be disclosing, but I think it's upwards of 500%. But there's some companies in there that if they IPO, this could be going to potentially 15x or 1500%. So yeah.
And you manage now. I mean, of course, you've invested in funds and stuff like that. In your own fund, do you have to invest to be a part of the fund?
Yeah. So we have to have skin in the game, right?
Okay.
So in our case, in fact, the general partnership, which is myself and one other individual, they are. We actually have put almost about 30% of the capital ourselves.
And this is a strange question, but a lot of people are curious about this, including myself. How do people who run VCs make money? I mean, do you get a salary? Because you're not getting a return on the investment either, right? But you've got to keep the kitchen expenses going. How does that work for someone?
Yeah, so it's a very simple global model. I mean, the standard is 2% management fees. So let's say your fund is $50 million, right?
Right.
So 2% would be $1 million a year.
Okay.
Now, those are not for me to pocket.
Right.
It's as managing partner. Those are actually to run the operation. So we have to do lots of stuff like this KYC, due diligence stuff. There's KYC, MLCFT, regulatory stuff, compliance, audits, all that stuff. Paying the team. So you actually have to run the operations. And then what's left over, the managing partner can take. Right?
Okay.
And other stakeholders.
And for example, do you have to have a large team, or you don't? I mean, is it the kind of business where I'd imagine this is a lot of drawing room deals, right? This is less.
So you need analysis. So it just depends on your style, right? I don't believe in 50 people teams. I think it's inefficient. I'd rather have 3-4 people because it's also analysis, right? Financial, it's discussions like this.
Yeah.
A lot of debate and then projections. So I basically personally a 4 or 5 people team. Right. That's it. We're the specialists.
Yeah,
and
lean
team. You can discuss. You're kind of cohesive, and I think that's the most optimal. And then we also, by the way, get a carry, which is let's say a $50 million fund. The value at an exit goes to $200 million, right? So then you're looking at basically 20% for the managing team.
Right.
So that's not bad. And so our incentives are tied with performance of the fund, which is therefore we're the investors. So that's the general mechanism.
ठीक है. Ajay, I'm going to take too much more of your time. I just have a last few questions, right? The first one is, I know that you're heavily invested or were heavily invested in crypto.
Yeah.
And a lot of people in Pakistan, especially our listeners, want to know how crypto works. How do you make money from crypto? Is it a good time to invest in crypto? So I'll first ask you that, then I'll ask you the next question. So what about crypto?
You asked a question that I think we're going to need lots more time.
That's fine.
So
we'll go over. Just tell me about how this works.
Because I'm going in the rabbit hole of crypto now.
Okay.
So everything that's happening with the strong dollar, all this stuff, Pakistan's currency devaluing, this is actually linked to the changing of the monetary system and the money that's in our wallets, right? We're about to move from a paper or analog-based system. So paper is the physical cash, and the analog system is the current bank. When you see those digits in your bank account, that's there. It's digital, but in reality, because the settlement times are so long, it's analog. It's not instantaneous like this. So we're in the internet has been built on layers. So if you let's think about the TCP/IP layer very quickly to give you a rundown. Data, very baseline data, and connectivity was dial-up initially. So you had baseline things like email disrupted postal services, at least for like like letters and stuff, right? I'm not sure how many people write letters today. Back in the 90s, you had to, early 90s, because you didn't have prevalent email access. So as the internet, you have the TCP/IP layer. Then somebody said, hey, we should also have voice over IP, right? So there was a huge long distance business that was disrupted. All the AT&T and even PTCL and all these guys used to have big bills that they used to bill to your regular phones for calling Dubai or US. Now that's happening on, at least for the US, it's happening on WhatsApp. I think Dubai it's BOTIM.
Yeah.
But my point is you have to look at, in order to invest, you have to look at what paradigm of the internet you're in. You definitely could not have done a mobility play when you didn't have even smartphones.
Right. Didn't make sense.
So the logic comes from this entire layer that's being building. Then video over IP happened, where suddenly now everybody's watching Netflix, YouTube all over the world. And it's actually impacting the linear satellite and cable channels. Some of them know it, some of them don't know it yet, that they're in there, they're being disrupted.
Yeah, they're being...
Then we had now what we're in now, and obviously there's other forms of disruption that happen with each opening. But I mean, I'm just trying to just keep it simple. We're in the exchange of value disruption today, which is money merging with the internet. So that's a very different, profound change, right? So regulations that you're seeing, FATF, that's again source of funds on cash. So it wants to trace effectively globally where's cash going, the black economy, right? Imagine a world without cash, whether it's 5 years, 10 years, maybe 20 years in Pakistan. It's going to take a lot more smartphones to be seeded. I think we're already at 50% of the population, but we need to get to at least 70, 80% to actually start to eradicate cash from the system, and the central bank would end up doing that. But that's where the world is headed. The internet is moving at a 15x velocity, and money transfer system in settlements is moving at the dinosaur age. Like, I mean, I can pick up the phone and call a friend in New York and do a video call with a friend on New York on WhatsApp or FaceTime in a split second. But if I want to send the person money, it's going to take like 3 to 4 days for settlements. And I have to go through 50, hoops of paperwork and all sorts of stuff, right? At least from Pakistan. The rest of the world, things have changed. You can send money, credits instantaneously.
Yeah.
So that evolution process is happening, but don't think from the existing banking setup. That is where you have to put physical cash. There were custodians, and then basically you're writing checks or sending wires. That's like obsolete. The new component is where basically money itself is on your phone. You press a button, it credits instantaneously, and it's digital, so it has to settle instantaneously. Right. The key crypto is the protocol in cryptos is effectively, and those are like 10,000 of them competing. There's only a handful that are competing to be money. The rest are competing to be tokens, which I'll go into as a whole different universe. It's like our financialized world moving to a digital world.
Right.
And this will happen gradually. So, जब ये settlement आपकी instantaneous होगी, so it has to, in order for digital money to replace cash, what has to happen is you have to feel, as let's say I'm buying a glass from you, right? So you say, hey, Faisal, this glass is 100 rupees. If I give you the 100 rupee physical cash, you're going to say, yep, it's settled. I take the glass and I leave. लेकिन अगर मैं डिजिटली आपको पे कर रहा हूँ और मैं ग्लास पकड़ लेता हूँ और वो आपका 1 घंटे बाद सेटल हो रहा है, तो आप कहेंगे नहीं यार इसको यहाँ पे छोड़ो, जब वो सेटल होगा देन कम बैक. नाउ दिस इज अ ट्रस्ट डेफिसिट कि यार मैं ले लूँ, आप मुझे ग्लास ना दें. तो दैट्स व्हाई कैश इज प्रेफर्ड, कि उधर ही ट्रांजैक्शन हो गया है. And bank transfers or bank wires or digital settlements today, or analog settlements I like to call them, usually are done for very large scale transactions where there's a trusted party in the middle, lawyers and contracts.
Like a house or something large.
Exactly. Property में बहुत से इस तरह वो pay order बन के आता है.
Exactly.
It is, you don't want to do that for buying a glass. So I could get a pay order. I don't know. Can you even get a 100 rupee pay order?
I don't know. I guess, but theoretically you should be able to. Yeah.
But मैं सिर्फ दिखाने की, my point in this exercise is try to show कि look, it's creating inefficiencies, right? Now, once you go digital and I press a button and you receive it instantaneously, there was a problem called the double spend problem, which is because the speeds were not fast enough, in my wallet or ledger, I could give you 100 rupees, and before the system upgrades, I give the money to someone else. And remember, money, in order for it to behave like money, it has to be immutable in the sense that I can't reverse the transaction.
Yeah, of course.
Or no one should be able to. Sorry, in order for it to behave like currency, like notes, nobody should be able to reverse it, right? पैसा एक बार आपके हाथ में आ गया, आपने ले
खत्म हो
गए,
गया.
it's cash, right? It's a bearer's asset. So this is what's evolving. It's going to play out in all sorts of bubbles. Like, things are going to come up. Everyone's going to come up, claim to have the better technology. But that's the ecosystem this is playing out in. And we're eventually going to move to a new monetary system in the world. जिसके आपको fissures अभी नजर आ रहे हैं. It's ये जो सारा जो interest rates ऊपर जा रहे हैं, Russia is invading Ukraine, the entire crisis there. What's playing out in Taiwan, this entire SCO bloc that's being created, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization bloc with Central Asian countries under the tutelage of Russia and China, and then other powerful countries like Turkey, Iran are observers. India is also part of this. Pakistan is a part as well. Then let's look at the other region, which is MENA, Middle East, North Africa, and Pakistan. These are all trade corridors or trade zones, you can say. What currency they choose to price as their trade currency has profound implications on the monetary system of the world. Historically, it was a no-brainer that we want to price this in dollars.
Yeah.
But gradually, like if your own currency does not have demand outside your borders, which is the rupee, for example, it's not a reserve currency. Reserve currencies are the dollar, the pound, the yen, and the euro.
Yeah.
Right? And actually, the euro and the dollar are the strongest two. And then there's the yen and pound. Pound is the weakest link now. They have a natural advantage because if there's demand outside, it's trusted, it's liquid, and there's also demand for those countries' bonds. So those countries do well because they can get borrowings very quickly. In Pakistan, there's a confidence crisis in general because of multiple structural issues in the country. So our currency, even if our bonds, sovereign bonds, जो government back करती है, उसकी external demand पे लोग घबराते हैं. So जब हम borrow भी करने जाते हैं, तो हमारे terms इसलिए strict होते हैं. Because people are questioning our ability to pay back. We're a big economy. It's just how we've structured ourselves. If we fix these things, actually Pakistan is the next South Korea effectively. Don't look at us as like, we shouldn't be competing with like India as a behemoth.
Yeah.
But look at this global chain. We are definitely a South Korea level country if we can get
In the
things
making,
correctly.
yeah.
So coming back to the final crypto component. So now within this entire disruption that's happening, and I don't believe that Bitcoin is going to become the world reserve currency. It could. I think there's an outlier chance of that. I think more than likely it's going to be the digital dollar. Currently we're on the analog dollar in the banking system and then the physical paper cash one. So either it's going to be the digital dollar or it's going to be a basket of currencies where everybody sits down and acknowledges these are the big economies in the world and the currencies people trust.
Yeah.
And so you can create a new, you can say a token equivalent, which will be digital format. But for example, there's something at the IMF, International Monetary Fund, called the Special Drawing Rights, SDR, which takes into component, for example, the dollar based on their world trade, the euro based on their share of the world trade, the yen, the pound, and the renminbi. In fact, that was added in 2016 for the first time. They're Chinese currency. They're not available on the SWIFT system, which is the international wiring banking system, but the Chinese are recognized by the IMF as an international trade currency and a potential reserve currency. So maybe that type of monetary system emerges, and that'll be digital or crypto in nature, backed by some sort of sovereign. But what Bitcoin is, in my opinion, and I think it's a great bet, is digital gold. It's replacing the place that gold has. Gold has been a store of value historically, and I actually think that Bitcoin is going to suck the sentiment that would have gone into gold as we're facing devaluation all over the world. And it's going to continue to happen this entire decade until we move to a new system. I think Bitcoin is going to suck a lot of that element in.
So is Bitcoin like gold in that it's never going to go down? I mean, is it the one we should invest in even if it's at a high rate right now? Or should you go for a, I don't know, something up and coming?
Definitely not Dogecoin.
Okay.
Look, so obviously when you're speculating, it's very risky. So
Right.
to call it safe is
Nothing is safe.
is not. In my world, I consider crypto to be actually safer than your regular currency because people don't measure that even the dollar is going down. So let's do the math on Bitcoin. So 2009 में जब बिटकॉइन लॉन्च हुआ था तो उसकी जो वैल्यू थी वो थी 1 सेंट यानी कि $1 के सेंट के बराबर. So people call it volatile. People say that it's not appreciating, right? Today, even in a crash, I think आज $18,000 का था, however much. $18,000 are now needed to buy one Bitcoin. So just think of what the growth has been, right? And I think Bitcoin might even crash to $3,200 this time, because this is a very unique cycle. In crypto, it's like the dot-com bust. So if you go look at Amazon, dot-com bust में, I think it went from $106 down to like $6, because जो आपका bubble first time pop होता है, it's basically, it takes multiple waves to come down and settle back to revert to the mean. So when you see charts that go like this, they should come back to the mean. And that's what happened in dot-com. That's what's happened in crypto at the end of this cycle.
So are you currently selling Bitcoin, or are you holding on?
No,
to it?
I think, look, it's something that it's an asset like gold. You don't think about these type of assets as an investment. You think about them as exposure. It's an insurance from the devaluation. So I was taking exposure to it as early as 2015, 16, because my thesis was that we're headed in a world where central banks are going to print repeatedly. There's no way out of this current mess that we've been in since 2008. It's a global phenomenon. So you're going to have devaluation. I think if you fast forward from 16 to today, even I get shocked, even though I knew this was going to happen. But when I'm sitting there looking at the Pakistan rupee at 240, 250, I mean, open market में almost 250 है. It's pretty profound, right?
Yeah.
It's, I mean, अगर मैं 2016 में जाऊँ, I think rupee कितना था? I think 270, 68, 74 rupees to a dollar versus 250. So I'll do an exercise. I know it's getting long, but this is something you love.
No.
So I do this with a lot of my friends and founders, and I'll show you the value of gold in the system in terms of how currencies debase over time, and then वहाँ से आप उसको correlate कर लें Bitcoin के अंदर, right? Okay, so let's say you have 20 lakh rupees in the year 2000.
ठीक है.
So now cash you want to invest somewhere, right? Because it depreciates or devalues over time. So the logic would have been, let me just buy dollars. I think the dollar around that time was somewhere around 50 rupees to a dollar, which sounds pretty remarkable to us now, but people at that time were holding their head because it looked like it had devalued. So basically अगर आप convert करते तो आपको 20 लाख के $40,000 मिल जाते, right? And had you converted that 40,000, not gone for dollar, but you went for gold. Gold was $200 an ounce. So let's go ahead and divide $40,000. Dollars में measure करते हैं gold को. तो basically आपके पास 20 लाख रुपए होते, which is equal to $40,000 or 200 ounces of gold. And that's international measures ounces, especially in the London Bullion Exchange for gold. Let's fast forward to today. Okay. So 20 lakh rupees is 20 lakh rupees. And this is, I'm talking about if you were just to take currency and basically move it to other formats, not putting it in the stock market or land. There you would have seen the return because those other investments are capturing devaluation and inflation, offsetting inflation. So 20 lakh rupees आज 20 lakh रुपए ही हैं. If you were to convert it to dollars today, had you just kept it in 20 lakhs, you were, let's say, really complacent and you didn't see what was happening. I think मैं open market का rate लेता हूँ जो आपको dealers देंगे 250 के आसपास है. तो $8,000. तो clearly you were better off changing to dollars in 2000. Your 20 lakh रुपए. $40,000 had you converted is still $40,000. Okay, fine. Everybody still thinks the dollar is strong. But let's see how the dollar is devaluing. So remember, it was 20 lakh rupees in 2000, $40,000 or 200 ounces of gold.
Yeah.
Let's come to this point today. And we just said 20 lakh rupees is $8,000. $40,000 is $40,000, but what is 200 ounces of gold in dollars? So let's do that math. Even in a crash, and I think gold is just in a short-term bear market. If you have a 10-year view, gold will always capture the devaluation. It is around 1,700 average. Last 90 days ke liye dete hain, dollars. So it's around $340,000 value, right? So all currencies, including dollars, are devaluing. Because अगर मैंने $40,000 के 200 ounces दिए थे in 2000, in 2022, I have to spend $340,000 to buy the same. Right? So this is the, in my opinion, this is the base. Once you understand this in investments, then you start looking at asset classes like, okay, what's bonds, fixed income, what is stocks, what is land, what is startups, or stocks. You're investing in public companies. You can also invest in private companies, whether those are tech companies, startups, or they're private companies, businesses as well, right? So, and tying all this back to crypto is that as we move to a cashless system, you can't have a bearer's asset in physical format. So it's a bearer's asset in virtual format, where Bitcoin is decentralized. So effectively, you have it in your control, and you can take it off chain. And well, you can never take it off chain, but you can take it offline and put it in a wallet from an exchange. So it's within your possession at that point, virtually.
Okay, final question.
Yep.
I know we've gone a bit over time, but I just have one last question. Let's say that I have 20 lakh rupees today.
Yep.
And this was going to be my question anyway, so it perfectly sort of fits in. What do I do? Give me three things. Like, so we understand that 2023 will be a bad year. It's probably not good to have Pakistani rupees cash. We don't know what the dollar will be like. Give me three things to invest in.
So if you go for the traditional thing, everybody would like run straight towards dollar, right? I think वो time था 2021 में convert करने का. Abhi you're kind of coming at the tail end of the strong dollar. So yeah, if you have a 10-year view and you just want to keep it in cash, keep it in dollars, fine.
Okay. You
can. I think there's better returns also, right? Those returns, and I'm talking about specifically about Pakistan, it changes globally. In my opinion, cryptos is the best return if you actually think on a 5 to 10 year horizon. But it's not legal in Pakistan, so I can't give anyone even informal advice to go for crypto. But I do think that our government will at some times make it legitimate. So at that time you can partake. But let's look at our local market, right? हमारे जो इस वक्त interest rates हैं, they're roughly around 16% or so. You can comfortably get fixed income products at 16 to 18% yield. Given we're at the tail end of the strong dollar cycle, it's not a bad investment. Historically, I would say stocks, but I'm saying that fixed income return is so high.
So what is fixed income?
Like bonds, Pakistan के जो government के bonds हैं, right?
Pakistan के government
आपने 20 लाख को लेके डाल दिया उस पे. So let's just take 10 लाख to make it simple, right?
ठीक है.
Like mathematically, so 10 लाख आपने डाले, so हर 10 लाख पे आपको तकरीबन कितना 1 लाख 60,000 per annum मिल रहा है, right? So it's pretty decent. I mean, that's the type of return you would see in risky assets.
Yeah.
Stocks पे भी आप अगर average out करें over a 10-year period, your return is roughly around 25 to 30%. Barring, I'm not talking about the years where suddenly people make gains. अगर आप up and down को देखते हैं, if I put 20 lakhs for 10 years in stocks, in Pakistan, IRR is roughly around, I think, like close to 25 to 35%. So today you want to go into fixed income. That's my preferred thing, because I think also next year, Pakistan is going to have to raise rates to about 20%. And it's not my assessment alone. This is what the assessment of the general financial industry is. That because the dollar is going to continue to remain strong, the devaluation को curb करने के लिए and to slow down the economy, हमारा जो balance trade है, उसके लिए जो main issue है हमारा, तो उसके लिए rates को ऊपर करना पड़ेगा, just like जो US कर रहा है इस वक्त. So 20% is a pretty good return अगर आप simply a safe, relatively safe asset.
And what's like a minimum amount I can buy a bond with? Is it 10 lakh se kam
That's a question. That's a good question. I don't know. It's like maybe, I think, denominations of 10,000 rupees. It used to be. I don't know what it is right now.
Achha. Okay, so we've got the bonds. That's one. Crypto. That's two. What's the third one?
Stock market. I think if you have a 3 to 4 year view,
PSX.
even at PSX,
Achha.
I think Pakistani equities or stocks are really, really undervalued right now because of fear. political instability, macro fears. I think if you have a long-term horizon view of anywhere from 3 to 4 years plus, you will make money on stocks. It's only a matter of time where money will come in aggressively. So stocks also good. Depends on you. So investment is all about your horizon of when you want the returns back, right? I also think Pakistani real estate is always a good bet in the long term. Maybe not now in Islamabad. Islamabad is a bit of an anomaly. It's going up constantly, and there's an inventory shortage. But I mean, if you look at Lahore, Karachi, those markets are depressed. So I don't think parking money in real estate right now is a bad option. Yeah. Again, it comes down to investment horizon. Real estate is not going to flip around in one day. It's going to take you, if you have a 5-year horizon.
So assuming you have that 5-year window, of course.
In a 5-year window, I mean, I would basically, so let's take out the fixed income. That would be short term. Also depends on age. If you're like post 55, 60, you want to be closer in fixed income like bonds, lesser on stocks. But in terms of younger individuals, if you have a 5-year view, buy land, buy your stocks, and sit on them in Pakistan and think. I mean, land is obviously safer, less volatile than bonds. And I do think mortgages are going to come in Pakistan eventually. And so therefore, most of the land value in Pakistan is still based on cash. And पिछले 1-2 साल से अगर आप anomaly देखें, वो जो उन्होंने corporates को offer किया था, the 3% loans, which is very low interest rates, was it 3% or 6%? वो जो every big industry was allowed to. So a lot of the land went up because people took loans and then basically bought land with it.
Yeah, makes sense. They purchased,
it's so I mean, these type of anomalies exist. I mean, I'm not supporting that. It's people do whatever they want to do, but I think you have to look at like streamline reality on things. On a long-term horizon, real estate will always offset your devaluation and give you better returns. But also at the same time, what you have to think about is leverage in the system. So if let's say कि अगर कोई भी real estate market है जिसमें लोग बैंक से borrow करके ले रहे हैं, those markets get riskier and riskier the further along you go. Because generally people don't have the actual money to continue to pay the installments. And when the music stops, suddenly real estate goes into a sharper dip. So Pakistan from that angle, कि बहुत कम mortgages, बहुत कम assets Pakistan में borrowing से हो रहे हैं. So it's a pretty good investment if you think long term.
ठीक है. Shayan, this was really insightful, and thank you very much for being on the podcast. Thank you guys for watching, and if you like the content, please subscribe to our channel, and we'll see you next time.